Year 10, hello and welcome to your poetry lesson for today. You have me instead of Miss Nunnally today, so hello. It has been so lovely to see you guys when I've been in school in the last week. I hope that your options lessons are all going well too, and I hope that you had a really lovely weekend. Okay, so this week we are going to be looking at the poem called The Emigree by Carol Rumens. Please, if you haven't already, take a minute to just pause the video and go and grab your anthology. Or, if you haven't got your anthologies, remember the booklets that we've been handing out to you when you've been coming in to see us. That has all of the poems and all the information there. Feel free to annotate, write on, do whatever you want with those booklets because they're yours. So if you haven't already, grab a pen, grab paper, get a copy of the poem in front of you, and then we will get started. Okay, so the first thing I want to start with is home. What does the word home mean to you? Just pause the video, take a second, have a little think. What is home? I don't know about you, but for me, I think of home as being somewhere where I'm safe. I think of it being somewhere that I know. I think of it as being somewhere where I'm surrounded by people that I care about and who care about me. I think about particularly home for me as being somewhere where I know I can walk out of my front door and I know what my surroundings are and I know who I'm going to see when I go out and I know how to get to places very, very quickly. So all of those things kind of add up to home for me. You might have something different. But we can also think of home, is your home in a wider sense, your original home? Is it where you were born? Do we have to go all the way back to the place where your parents were born to find your home? Is your home just where you live now? At any time, wherever I'm living right now, that's my home? Or is it actually, you feel like maybe you haven't found your home yet? Maybe home is somewhere where you want to go in the future. I think potentially even blends of all these different ideas can exist within one thing. Do you think your home influences your identity? Is your home, the place you feel you belong the most, is that actually a key part of who you are? And I'm asking all of these questions. I know I'm not giving you any answers, but I don't really want to answer them at the moment. Right now, I just want to throw these questions. I just want to get you thinking. So it doesn't matter if you don't feel like you know all the answers to these questions. That's absolutely fine. Because what we're going to do as we explore this poem is we're going to look through, we're going to explore these themes more, and we're going to start thinking about what we might think. And everyone's going to have a different opinion. Everyone's going to have a different idea about these ideas. So it's a discussion. Yeah, there's no right or wrong answer. But my next question, have you ever moved house? From anywhere. You might have just moved to a different house in the same road. You might have moved to a different part of the country. Maybe you've even moved to a completely new country. But I want you to think about, when you moved house, what did you have to leave behind? But also, what were the new things that you had to get used to? Pause the video for me here, grab your pen and paper, and if you have ever moved house, just jot down some answers to those questions. If you've never moved house, have a think about it. What would you leave behind if you had to move? And what would be the new things you'd think you'd need to get used to? Okay, I'm hoping you are back. So, let's have a look. What did you have to leave behind? You might have other answers to me, but this is where I'm coming from. You would have had to leave behind your house, probably. The house that you knew, the house that you grew up in. You may have had to leave family behind. Wherever you've moved, even if you've moved within the country, maybe you lived close to brothers, uncles, aunts, grandparents. You might have had to leave family behind. You might have had to leave friends behind. Coming on from that, you probably had to leave your school behind. If you've moved, you probably weren't going to the same school anymore. If you've moved a long way from a completely different part of the country or from a completely different country, you might have had to leave the weather behind. Maybe you came from somewhere there was lots of snow and now we don't get very much. Or maybe you've moved from somewhere that was really, really warm and hot and now, well, I'm looking out my window and it's raining. as I'm recording this, so you don't get as much of that in Britain. Maybe you had to leave foods behind, favourite dishes, things like that. Maybe you even had to leave your language behind. And when we think about the new things that we had to get used to when we move house, we've got to get used to a new house. Maybe new family. We might be moving closer to new family. We've got to make new friends. We're going to have to go to new schools. There might be new weather. There might be new food. We might now have to get used to a whole new language. So it's across your whole life that these things are going to change when you or someone in your family chooses to move house. It's a big thing. You might have had other things on your list. That's completely fine. But what do you think it would be like to be forced to leave your home and your country because of war and violence? So it's not a choice now that you're moving to somewhere completely new, that you're leaving behind all the stuff that makes your home, and you're having to rebuild your home from scratch. That's not a choice anymore. You have to move now. Just take a moment, write some notes if you want to, but just think, what would that actually feel like to be driven from your home and from your country because it was too dangerous for you to stay? There's too much violence. Pause the video, have a think. It's tough. This one is really tough, I find, this poem. We go to some quite deep, quite intrinsic places with this one. So, we are going to be looking at a poem that deals with this exact thing, this exact idea and concept of home, of identity, of being forced to leave. And the poem is The Emigree by Carol Rumens. So an emigree is someone who emigrates from or leaves their home country. But the word specifically suggests unwillingness, being displaced, being removed from your place in the world. You don't want to go if you're an emigree. And we're fairly sure, because it is emigree with two E's, the speaker in this poem is going to be female. If it just had one E, if I put my mouse over that one, if it was emigree like that, that would probably refer to a male. But because we've got two, we're probably looking at a female speaker, but the poem never explicitly says. So, Carol Rumens published this poem in 1993. It tells the story of a person, we presume a female, a woman, who was forced to leave their home country, and that we presume that it was because of war and violence. Even though the new place that they come to is safer, the speaker in the poem never feels completely happy in the new city. And even though their old home is now being torn apart by violence, the speaker remembers that city as it was when they were a child, as being beautiful and magical. So this poem, the whole way through, compares two cities. Her home city, the city she was born in, and she remembers it as being beautiful and safe and magical. It's her home. And even though now it's that city that's dangerous and dark and torn apart, her new city that she's in, that's the one that feels dangerous to her. That's the one that she doesn't understand and she doesn't feel comfortable in. Okay, before we get into reading the poem, I want to pick out some key words. So in a second, you are going to pause the video for me, and I want you to do, you can either do mind maps or you can do little bullet points. What do these 4 words suggest to you? November, tyrant, accuse, sunlight. Pause the video, do me some mind mapping, please. Okay, shall we have a little look at what I've got? Again, you guys might have some other things, but this is what I've gone for. So for November, it's winter. If it's November, it's, oh no, end of the year, it's dark, it's cold, probably bad weather. But as I've just said there, November, think about it symbolically, nearly the end of the year. So if we're in the November of something, nearly the end, so it might be the November of a city, might be nearly the end of a city. The November of a book might be the second last chapter at the end of a book. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay, I'm going to pretend you all said yes and nodded. I hope so. Tyrant. What did we get for tyrant? I said controller. A tyrant is someone who insists that they get to control everything and that they have to be the ones in charge and no one is allowed to question them at all. A tyrant is going to have power. They're going to insist on having all the power. And I would link that with violence. I don't think a tyrant gets to become a tyrant without there being some violence involved. And where you have violence, you have fear. These are the words that are being suggested to me. And injustice. I feel, for me, if you have a tyrant in charge, it means that you don't have democracy. People aren't voting for who they want to lead them. People aren't getting to make choices about how they live their lives. Because one person with all the power is using violence and fear to control people. And that to me is injustice and is bad. For accuse, this is quite an interesting one. Argument, I think if people are accusing each other of things, there's definitely going to be tension and argument. I think crime and punishment, I think if you're being accused of a crime, therefore you might be punished for a crime that you're accused of. You might not have done the thing that you've been accused of, but you might still be punished for it. I still think fear, I still think violence. And now, just to take it up a notch, I'm going to link those words in. If you've got a tyrant and injustice, a tyrant would be able to just accuse anybody, anywhere of anything, to punish them, to strike fear into their hearts, to get rid of them. So that's going to link into that injustice. If you've got a tyrant running around accusing people of all sorts, all of these other negative things are going to happen. So actually, we've looked at 3 really negative words so far. Let's finish off on something a little bit brighter. Sunlight. Very, very different connections to sunlight, I think. Daytime. Bright. Warm. In contrast to that November, that kind of cold, dark weather, sunlight is much more warm and bright. And linking away from warm and bright, keeping that symbolism, making it symbolic. Hope. We always think, don't we? Imagine in horror films, you always get the last group of survivors or someone, and they're hunkered down and they've got to fight through the night. But as soon as the sun rises, that's when you know they're going to make it because they fought through the night. Now the sun's up, so there's hope again. That kind of symbolism. Being able to see. Yeah, if it's daylight, you can see, you can look around at things. To that symbolically as well, to me, would kind of mean no secrets. Rather than it being tyrants controlling people and accusing people of things, maybe there's actually some hope. Maybe there's some truth, some justice. There are fewer secrets. There might be some good stuff in this poem as well. You guys may have had different things. Again, it's completely fine. Remember, it's your opinions. Your opinions and your feelings that we are looking for. As long as you can tell me why you think that, then that's fine. Let's have a read of this poem. So I have put in, I've coloured and highlighted the words that we just looked at. See if you can work out why sunlight is in a different colour to all the other words. The Emigree. There once was a country. I left it as a child, but my memory of it is sunlight clear, for it seems I never saw it in that November which, I am told, comes to the mildest city. The worst news I receive of it cannot break my original view, the bright filled paperweight. It may be at war, it may be sick with tyrants, but I am branded by an impression of sunlight. The white streets of that city, the graceful slopes glow even clearer as time rolls its tanks and the frontiers rise between us, close like waves. That child's vocabulary I carried here, like a hollow doll, opens and spills a grammar. Soon I shall have every coloured molecule of it. It may by now be a lie, banned by the state, but I can't get it off my tongue. It tastes of sunlight. I have no passport, there's no way back at all, but my city comes to me in its own white plane. It lies down in front of me, docile as paper. I comb its hair and love its shining eyes. My city takes me dancing through the city of walls. They accuse me of absence, they circle me. They accuse me of being dark in their free city. My city hides behind me. They mutter death, and my shadow falls as evidence of sunlight. Oh, I really like this poem. Did you get it? Did you work out why sunlight was in a different colour? So first of all, I've put sunlight, that positive word, in a different colour, but also look how many times the word sunlight is repeated. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Sunlight shows up in every stanza. None of the other words are repeated. So that's a little piece of symbolism, something to think about. The sunlight keeps coming back, no matter what else is happening in this poem. Okay, so throughout the whole poem, Rumens juxtaposes, contrasts the beautiful memory of the emigre's home city with the reality of the new city that she's in. And even though the emigre's home city has been destroyed by the war, she remembers it as a place of light and safety. But in contrast, she now feels scared and alone in the new city, even though there's no war there. So let's just have another look at stanza 1. So there once was a country I left as a child. She is remembering the city that she was born in. I never saw it in that November, which comes to the mildest city. We talked about November meaning the end of things, the end of the city. She never saw it at the end. And now, now she's left it, even though she's hearing the worst news, she's hearing about tyrants, she's hearing about war, but her memory is still this like bright, filled paperweight of memory. And no matter what she hears about it now, she can't lose her initial memories of what it used to be like when she was a child. In stanza 2, she describes what her memory is. So it's white streets, graceful slopes, her child's vocabulary. She learnt her language, her home language, but she learnt it when she was a child. So the words that she has, maybe she doesn't actually know the words for, I don't know, more adult things in her home language. But she still tastes it. She can still taste the rhythms, and it tastes of that sunlight that comes back through. So she's remembering, even as time pulls her away, time fights her. And you can see that military imagery, tanks, frontiers rising. So time is fighting her for these memories, but she still remembers all the beauty. She remembers the taste of her original language. And then finally, I have no passport, there's no way back at all. So we know physically she can't get back there. Link to tissue, importance of paper. Yeah, passports. If you don't have a passport, you don't have that piece of paper, you're trapped, you're stuck. You can't go somewhere. So physically she can't do it, but her city comes to her in her memories. And then you've got this beautiful personification. It lies down. I comb its hair and love its shining eyes. It takes me dancing. So this is her remembering all of the memories from her home place, remembering the things we were talking about earlier, her house, her school, her friends, the food, the weather. And she's imagining kind of protecting it and looking after it and combing its hair and stroking it. And then right in this last little bit, we get a shift. They accuse me of absence. They circle me. They accuse me of being dark in their free city. So now we shift. This is actually how she feels in her new place. She doesn't belong here. This isn't where she's meant to be. And she feels as though people, even though there's no war in this new city, the people are looking around her and judging her, and she feels like she doesn't fit in. She wants to protect her city, to keep it hidden, but we still return to that sunlight. We still return to that positive image at the end, that image of hope. Okay, so we've talked about that juxtaposition, the memory of the emigre's home city with the reality of the new one. What I want to do now is investigate the techniques of how Rumens does this. Rumens is the poet, remember. First things first, guys, remember please, emotion, emotion, emotion. Feelings, feelings, feelings. What are the feelings that the poet is trying to make us feel? What are the pictures the poet is trying to put inside our heads? That's the important bit, yeah? Now what we're going to do is we're going to see the how, and we're going to see the why it works. Yeah? So it's what, how, why. We're going to read the poem again to look at some of these techniques, but this time I want you to follow the pronouns. So the pronouns are words that refer to people. So I, my, we, our, they, she, he. Look for those pronouns. What do you notice about them? Is there anywhere that they change? So there once was a country. I left it as a child, but my memory of it is sunlight clear. For it seems I never saw it in that November which I am told comes to the mildest city. The worst news I receive of it cannot break my original view, the bright filled paperweight. It may be at war, it may be sick with tyrants, but I am branded by an impression of sunlight. The white streets of that city, the graceful slopes, glow even clearer as time rolls its tanks and the frontiers rise between us, close like waves. That child's vocabulary I carried here, like a hollow doll, opens and spills a grammar. Soon I shall have every coloured molecule of it. It may by now be a lie, banned by the state, but I can't get it off my tongue. It tastes of sunlight. I have no passport, there's no way back at all, but my city comes to me in its own white plane. It lies down in front of me, docile as paper. I comb its hair and love its shining eyes. My city takes me dancing through the city of walls. They accuse me of absence, they circle me. They accuse me of being dark in their free city. My city hides behind me. They mutter death. And my city, my shadow, falls as evidence of sunlight. Sorry about that last little slip there. There should also be another me there as well. That should be red. My bad. Okay, so I've crunched it. What I've done, I've taken all the pronouns and I've crunched it up together. Pause the video, have a look at all the pronouns. What do you notice? Is there a change anywhere? There we go. I'll do that as a little hint for you now. Okay, so looking at these pronouns, Rumens is using the pronouns to emphasise how uncomfortable the emigree feels in the new city. Can you see? I, my, I, my, I, us. That's an inclusive pronoun, isn't it? And then suddenly we get this shift, they, their, they. There's a very clear sense of me, of the speaker, versus them, versus the other people. They're not together, they're not blending at all. So that is one way that Rumens is juxtaposing the two different cities and the feelings of the speaker. The next thing I want you to do, and I'm going to ask you guys please to get your poems and to just do this on your own. So pause the video, do this one on your own. I want you to follow the light. So go through the poem and please look for references to all things that are light. I'm sorry, that should say light. Oh, it's terrible today. That should say light. For all things that are light and all things that are dark in the poem. And I want you to draw me a table, so light and dark, and tell me every time you find a reference, is it, if that's a reference to light, is it about the home city or is it about the new city? If you find a reference to something that's dark, is she talking about her home city or is she talking about her new city? Pause the video, find me the light and dark. What do the light and dark refer to? You with me? You back? Okay, lovely. So, this is what I've got very quickly. I won't read the whole thing again, but you can see if these are the things that you were getting as well. You can always pause the video if I'm going through too quickly. Pause it or rewind it and have a look back. But this is what I've got. So if it's green, it's referring to her home city, and if it's blue, it's referring to her new city. So references to light: sunlight clear, bright filled paperweight, sunlight, white streets, the slopes glow, coloured molecules, sunlight, white plane, shining eyes, sunlight. Then for dark, I went with November, and then dark, death, and shadow. What do we notice about these different words? Rumens uses far more symbols of light than of dark. So there's less than half the same ones for dark. And all of the light images, all of the ones that I've put in green, relate to her home city. So everything, there's nothing dark that links to her home city at all. It's all the light. There's only one dark image, only November, links to her home city. And then the rest of them, so 3/4 of the images that she uses which are dark, relate to the new city. So can we see how, in setting up that contrast, original home city versus new city, she's using light and dark, she's carrying on with that juxtaposition to show the reader how much more positive her memories are than her real life is. Okay, and finally, because I am aware of the time, how long have I been going for? 26 minutes. Okay, guys. Last thing that I want us to look at in this poem today, I want you to follow the structure. Go through the poem again. What person is it written in? Is it first? Is it third? Can you find any rhythm in the poem anywhere? What rhyme does the poem have? And what do you notice about the punctuation? So pause the video again, have a little look through and see what you can find for those 4 things, please. You with me? Nice. Okay. The poem is in the first person. That's great. That's all well and good. What am I going to say next? People in my class are going to know. Why? Who cares? Do I care that the poem's in first person? I should. But remember, you've got to tell me why. You've got to tell me why something matters. Why is the poet doing it? What effect does it have on the reader? By putting it in first person, it makes it sound as if they are personal memories. She's saying, my city, my home, I remember. It feels as though it is real, and the reader feels as though they are being told something real, so that makes it more important. Little flag I just want to say here, though. Carol Rumens, the poet, she was born and she grew up in South London. She isn't the Emigree. She has made up a person, she's made up a voice, and she is pretending to speak in that way. Do not assume that the poet and the speaker in the poem are the same thing. So Carol Rumens is trying to make the effect of making it sound like a real story because it's in that first person, but it's not actually her story. She has made it up. There really isn't a rhyme scheme or a rhythm at all. You're going to have to work very, very hard to find it. Why? It makes it sound more like real speech. It doesn't sound like a poem if you just read it. So this is going to represent the lack of order, the lack of structure in the speaker's life. Her life isn't all perfect rhyming couplets and neat and tidy. Her life is messy. Real life is messy, yeah? Because it sounds more like real speech, that's going to emphasise its real memories. It's emphasising that effect that this is a real thing being told by a real person, even though we know it's not. So the rhythm, the rhyme scheme, and the first person are all combining together to create this effect. And finally, did you notice quite a lot of the lines actually end with full stops? We get to the end of the line, and even though there's not much rhythm or rhyme, we stop on a full stop. So there's kind of a lack of freedom. The lines don't run on in the same way that she has no passport, she can't go running back to her country. The lines of the poem aren't allowed to run on, aren't allowed to go free. She gets to the end of something and she stops. And then she gets to the end of the next thing and she's stuck again. And it kind of shows the way her life has been constrained and controlled, or the speaker's life has been constrained and controlled by these other forces. She hasn't been allowed to live her life in her city. She hasn't been allowed to do what she wants to do. So that end stopping of the lines shows that control from around the outsides. Okay, lovelies. That is all that I am going to tell you about the poem The Emigree. Please feel free to go and have a little look. There's so much stuff on the internet. In terms of keeping stuff relevant, On Show My Homework, where I put the link for this, I'm also going to give you the link to some news sites, some current news websites and journalism that kind of tells you about what refugees and what immigrants are going through at the moment. So they're quite intense reads, but just to link all of the emotion and the feelings in this poem with real life stuff, because we did the same thing with Checking Out My History, the Black Lives Matter, the statues coming down. There's a lot of real world stuff that's going on right now that's really, really relevant to this poem. So if you want to, please feel free to have a click through some of those links and to find out. And my final question, are there any comparisons that you think you could make between the Emigree and Checking Out Me History? So for the last time, pause the video please, have a quick brainstorm. How do you think you could make some comparisons? Okay, hopefully you've had time to do a pause and come back. These were my ideas. Identity, both poems talk about identity. Both poems specifically talk about losing or finding your identity. They're both kind of about learning to exist in different cultures that are different to your own. They both talk about experiences of childhood and how it felt growing up. They both deal with the ideas that other people don't understand who you are, that you're different from the people around you. And they both kind of as well deal with people trying to change you. So John Agard, Checking Out My History, felt like by only teaching him white history, people were trying to take away what he was and change him into something else. And obviously the speaker in The Emigree feels as though she doesn't fit in her new place. She's going to have to change to feel comfortable and to fit in there. Right, guys, I will leave you be. Any questions, please feel free to email me or to drop me a line on Show My Homework. I'm more than happy to go through stuff. The very, very, very best of everything. Take care, have a great week, and hopefully I'll see you as soon as it's safe. Bye bye!